For the first time in 200 years, American children may die younger than their parents. They are facing more disease, more dysfunction, and we have fewer answers.
Starting with breaking news to discuss the foodborne illnesses crisis.
46 taken to the hospital.
Increase in the number of children diagnosed with autism.
The United States could see a wave of deaths from chronic disease.
It was like a lightning bolt and a punch in the gut at the same time, to look at my perfect newborn son. And for me, that day, my mission started to change that statistic.
Welcome to the Rest Factor podcast. On today's show, we have Katie Wells, also known as the Wellness Mama. Katie Wells is a certified nutrition consultant, master certified health coach, and founder and CEO of wellnessmama.com. A mom of 6 with a background in journalism, she took health into her own hands and started researching to find answers to her own health struggles. Her research turned into a blog and podcast, and she's now written over 2,000 blogs, 3 books, and was named one of the 100 most influential people in health and wellness. Welcome to the Rest Factor podcast. I'm your host, Ana Marie Schick, certified health coach and sleep expert here at Sleep Me. On today's show, we have Katie Wells joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Well, so as I was reading about kind of your whole journey, what inspired you to transition from journalism to health and wellness, into the whole sphere, and then ultimately the creation of Wellness Mama?
Yeah, it was kind of a twofold story, actually, that I never anticipated or intended. I originally wanted to get into journalism and perhaps eventually politics with the hope of helping the world in some way. And what lined up as kind of the perfect storm of factors was that after finishing school, I got pregnant pretty quickly with my first son and started having some weird health symptoms throughout the pregnancy and then especially after. And that would go on to become a many-year journey through many doctors to find out eventually that I had Hashimoto's, and that now full circle, I no longer do. I actually got labs today and have no detectable antibodies whatsoever. So it's not just in remission, it's actually gone.
Phenomenal.
But for many years, I was told that this would be lifelong, that there's nothing I could do about it, that there was nothing that would improve it. And that just it didn't feel right to me. And I wondered if there were more things that hadn't been considered related to that. And there weren't a lot of resources even available back then. And so I was diving deep into medical journals. We didn't have AI to give us answers at the tip of our fingers.
Dr.
And so
Google.
I got to turn the journalism passion into research into my own health. And it sounds silly in hindsight, but I started realizing there's so much more to nutrition than just the calories or whether you're gaining body fat or not. That, like J.J. Virgin says, our body's not a bank account, it's a chemistry lab. And the way so many factors like light, like supplements, like sleep, like food, are like chemistry and signaling mechanisms to your body. So it was a very long and winding journey with my own health. And as I started finding these things, I realized there were many other women going through similar paths and that these resources were difficult to find. So I just wanted to share because it had been so helpful for me, and I hoped it would help other people as well. And the dual part of this story is that around that same time, actually at my 6-week follow-up appointment when I had my first child, I read in Time magazine in the waiting room that for the first time in 2 centuries, the current generation of American children would have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. And the contrast of holding this perfect newborn and reading that his generation was going to have what we're seeing now play out, rising rates of cardiovascular disease, of cancer, of autoimmune disease, of autism, we're seeing all of this happen in real time. And I started asking, it didn't seem normal that shift could happen so drastically in one generation. We've never seen that before in human history. And so I started asking why and realized both my own health answers and the answers to that question overlapped in a lot of ways. And it's all the multifaceted factors of the modern lifestyle, of our sort of divorce from nature and nature deficit disorder, in the declining nutrient levels in our diet, in artificial light disrupting our sleep. And it's not just a single factor, but the good news is that the vast majority of those are within our own ability to affect change. And so that led to my very fundamental belief that we are each our own primary healthcare provider and that we can work with amazing practitioners, but at the end of the day, both the responsibility and the power to affect change lie within us. And so that's kind of where I approached Wellness Mama from, was just how can I shorten the journey that I was on for other people? How can I help them have an easier path in learning how to be their own primary healthcare provider?
You just said so much in that, and I mean, there were so many different times when I wanted to stop you and be like, "Wait, say more. Wait, say more." Because it's just you know, through your own lived experiences personally with your own health, but then also as you're becoming a mother and learning how to become a mother, and then over and over again you were having to juggle all of it, what your body was doing, what your mind was telling you, your profession, and then most importantly your role as a mother, and trying to stay well for it all and educate yourself and kind of trust your gut. I mean, I think one of the things that motherhood teaches us, and maybe for some just adulthood in general, is there is something to be said for what our gut, I mean, never better said, right? What our gut is telling us. And you mentioned nature deficit disorder, which when I was also researching some of your blogs yesterday, I saw that as well. Talk to us more about that, what you mean by nature deficit disorder. And, you know, if we like to label things, this is such a good label to throw out there and use and understand, because I think it's at the core of what is going on with our sleep, definitely, but with our health as well.
Absolutely. I feel like so many of the factors that come under the umbrella of how the modern lifestyle can disrupt kind of how we're designed to live optimally as humans fit under that term of nature deficit disorder, in that we were meant to be in alignment with nature. And that doesn't mean that we need to go live in a tent. It just means we need to understand the ways that our physiology is meant to interact with the biology of our planet, and with light especially, and with the nutrient levels that are meant to be in our food, even if they're not, and then use those strategies to our advantage to curate our environment as much as possible to be supportive instead of detractive from our health. And I think just like we create our environment in our homes, in the same way, our environment creates us. And so understanding those factors, it becomes an N of one study. And I think this is where the disconnect sometimes happens, when people get really data driven and they want to have all the double blind placebo controlled studies, which is great. However, those are all just aggregate data based on population studies, and they can be a great starting point for our own research. But I think the most valuable experimentation we do in our life is the N of one study of ourselves, because the statistics don't matter if you are in the percentage that they don't apply to. And it doesn't matter if it's a small chance of something if it does apply to you. So I think that self-experimentation is so important. And I feel like I've kind of come full circle over the last 15 years in health and wellness, in having gone through all the trends of the supplements that have become popular, the biohacks that have become popular, and those are awesome. And what I learned through all of those is it kind of goes back to this concept of nature deficit disorder, and more importantly, like supporting the body on that level with tools that are thankfully very easy to implement, low cost or free. And when we make them lifestyle habits, they make all of those fancy biohacks and supplements so much more effective. And if you don't get these parts right, you can throw all the supplements in the world at something. And I did this for years, and it's not going to make the difference it could, because you don't have the foundation. And so kind of operating from that pillar of nature deficit disorder, it's asking the questions and getting to the first principles of how do I create an environment that is most in alignment with nature. And I think actually this is where the light and sleep cues become a huge foundational piece as well. And it's one that statistically, most of us, especially in America, are not really optimizing to the degree that we should. And it's largely free to do this. There's things like all of the data pointing to the importance of morning sunlight, and
Right.
how simply going
Circadian
outside.
alignment.
Exactly. Simply going outside as soon as possible after we wake up and getting even just 10 minutes of natural light on our eyeballs, not through a window, not with glasses, but just natural light. Bonus points if we're barefoot in the grass and hydrating at the same time. But those are little nature cues. And we know that light and food are two big circadian signaling mechanisms. And so understanding that, how can we use those to create safety cues for our body that reinforce that we're living in alignment with nature? So I think some simple shifts, it's not all or nothing. It's not getting rid of parts of your life that are important. It's just maybe tweaking the timing a little bit, maybe getting that morning sunlight first thing, making sure you're hydrating before you're eating, making sure you're getting protein and micronutrients before caffeine, and not looking at a screen the second you wake up. Like that alone will shift your hormones. I saw that on my labs. I saw drastic hormone changes and cortisol changes and sex hormone changes just from starting to dial in those factors. And from there, adding on more light throughout the day whenever possible. I say a lot, I'm solar powered, and the more time I spend in the sun, the better I feel. But light so powerfully impacts literally every cell in our body. It allows us to absorb nutrients at up to 500% more than we would without light. It supports our mitochondria. It supports our sodium potassium pump and the electrical communications within our cells. We know that the body is electric. And so getting our light exposure dialed in is massive for that. And then the corollary to that is also realizing that artificial light, while not inherently bad in and of itself, that timing does matter. And so if we're sending bright light cues to ourselves late at night in the form of artificial light, it confuses our circadian signaling, it confuses our melatonin production, and we don't get the depth or quality of sleep that we could by, again, simply not even removing anything, just tweaking the timing, tweaking little factors within our environment. In my house, this looks like I have bright daylight bulbs in the ceiling lights that are on during the day. And at sunset, we switch to lamps that are eye level or below and that have either amber or red bulbs. And if you've never tried this, you will be amazed at how much more relaxed you feel.
Right.
And then if bonus points, if you want to like really curate a peaceful environment at night, I love doing this with my kids where we will sit around and have conversations, read books, put our feet up on the wall and let like all those stress hormones come into balance. That's a great time for like body work or fascia work or mobility, gentle stretching, drinking some calming tea, and just supporting the body in what would have been sitting around a campfire in the past, or
Right.
just having those conversations with family and friends.
Back to how we evolved in caves. When we come up, rise with the sun, set with the sun, the temperature of the earth, feet on the ground. It's interesting. One of my childhood memories of my own mother, and I never really understood it. I just accepted it as this was something she did. And I'm sure she did it after we got on the school bus and left. But I just remember her doing it on weekends, which meant she probably did it during the week, too, after we were gone on the school bus. But I just remember when I woke up, if I couldn't find her, she would be out in the yard, barefoot, walking just around in the yard. And I was like, well, it's whatever. She's crazy. But now I get it. I mean, it just innately, that's what one should do and want to do. And I think we've become so, especially in the U.S., so internalized and so behind closed doors and relying on artificial means of illumination at the wrong times during the day. And I think that definitely has had so much to do with, as you said, nature deficit disorder and circadian disalignment, so that now we have to kind of, like I've told so many other people, I think we're hacking our way back to basics, back to the way it used to be before our lives got so advanced and so modernized, even to the degree of textiles that we sleep with in bed, right? Things that make us cozy are also making us hot, and we can't sleep well when we're so hot. As well as the things that we're ingesting. The food is devoid of so many nutrients, generally the stuff that you get from the store on a daily basis. So just I think our getting back to basics is also so much to do with really digging deeper as far as what exactly are we putting into our bodies, on our bodies, around our bodies, and what are we doing with our bodies. It's not just about sitting at a desk. So much of our day is spent kind of in a forward flexed position and doing, things that open us up more physically and literally, and playing. I know that as a mom of 6, I know that play is something huge for you. How do you balance your professional life and your family life? And I know that, what everybody sees on the outside, we always, as a mom myself, it's like, yeah, I make it look good, but it's a train wreck over here. How do you feel like or how do you try to balance it all?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like in some ways, these foundational things actually really help my emotional and mental capacity to balance it. I've often thought for women, it's actually not how much we have to get done that is often the source of stress. It's the mental load of keeping all those loops open all the time and sort of emotionally and mentally managing all the variables. And so for me, part of that was putting structure around that so that I knew when the laundry was going to get done. I knew when meal planning was going to happen and food prep was going to happen. So I wasn't running all those mental loops. And also, I feel like this relates to touch back on a couple of things you just said of What really drove the sleep point and the light exposure point home for me was the camping study, which took people away from all artificial light for a period of up to a week, and how much almost all of their sleep problems entirely resolved in that time. Their mood disorders improved, their hormone levels on labs improved. And so I think that speaks to like we can change our lives when we support our body in the way that nature intended. And another quick tip along that would be if you can stop eating as close to sunset as possible. I know that's tough when the sun was setting at 4 p.m. where I lived, but if you can, your sleep quality will drastically improve. And I feel like sleep is truly the master switch. Like in almost 1,000 podcast episodes, I have not ever had one single expert say sleep is not absolutely vital to our health. I think sleep is the most underrated tool we have. And so it is one of my top priorities from a wellness perspective and from a budget perspective. I feel like anything I could do to support sleep actually gives me so much more bandwidth and capacity in daily life. And so one of the big ways of balancing it all for me is actually making that a non-negotiable, making downtime, making sleep, making actual recovery and rest absolute non-negotiables. And by doing that, hopefully also modeling that for my kids.
Raising that generation to not do what the generation on the Time magazine said it was going to do.
Exactly. And I think in the same vein, I try to also schedule peace first. This is like a thing I do even in my work week is put on the things that are non-negotiable that bring me more bandwidth, more joy, more energy. So things go on my schedule like going for walks in the sunshine with a weighted vest or having coffee with a friend and getting a reset or just simply laying in the sun. And I consider those things as important as podcasts, as work meetings, because they let me show up better as a mom. They let me show up more present on a podcast, and they help support all these things in kind of like a positive feedback loop. Because the great news is, just as if we have negative health habits and we're eating a ton of processed junk and we're staying up looking at screens till 1 a.m. and we're drinking 6 cups of coffee and not getting our cortisol in balance, just like those things can create a negative feedback loop, like a kind of negative flywheel. The good news is the body responds so quickly to positive changes and will shift to a positive feedback loop very quickly. And so for me, I really do hone in on and start with sleep. And my bedroom is my sleep sanctuary, and I have really prioritized that even in my budget. And I have a gorgeous like EMF curtain that drapes over my bed that's 90% because it's pretty and 10% because it also helps create a more restful environment. I have for years and years had a Chilipad, which again goes back to nature deficit disorder, because if we sleep on the ground, it's temperature regulated. Like dirt is not warm, and it actually gives valuable like proprioceptive feedback to our body and temperature feedback while we're sleeping. And personally, I don't want to sleep on the ground because I live in Florida and there's bugs everywhere. So instead, I get to put that on my bed. And once it's set up, the benefit is I'm increasing the ROI of my sleep without having to do anything. It's an automatic habit. Same thing with keeping it super dark in my room. And I have shades that block all light to the point that I can take a nap at noon if I wanted to in absolute darkness, even if it's super sunny outside. And those were all investments up front that now are effortless and that I see the impact on my sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people so often, I said, it's all about where you choose to prioritize, you can go for the low hanging fruit that costs nothing at all. It's about environment and behaviors, and those cost nothing as far as just you could put a towel or a blanket over your windows. You can black out your room as best you can. There are things that you can do. But then people won't balk at an expensive vacation or a $3,000 handbag, but something that they do, whether it's, any of the biohacks that you want to do, whether it's a Chilipad or any of the other, your EMF reducing gadgets, any of the things, even trackers, right? Like people are hesitant to invest in those when those are the ones that are going to pay off long term. It's like what you want now versus what you want to pay off so that you can continue to try to align your circadian rhythms with nature. But all this has been so enlightening. Where can people learn more about you and the Wellness Mama content and your products and your latest what you're focusing your energy and attention on lately?
Oh, thank you for asking. My favorite place right now is the podcast and just getting to have conversations with people with wide-ranging expertise. And I feel like I learn so much in every single one, and I'm just
They are
deeply
so enlightening,
grateful.
Katie. Oh my
Thank
gosh,
you.
so great.
So those are all hosted on wellnessmama.com, or they're anywhere you listen to podcasts. And I feel like that's a good format for the modern world, especially if, bonus points, you're going for a walk in the sunshine while you're listening. All the content also lives on wellnessmama.com, and I'm just Wellness Mama on social media. And my energy right now is actually flowing into 2 new book projects that I'm completing as fast as I'm able. One of them actually is about parenting, and it's a completely different approach to parenting, I think, than people have ever heard. And I'm really excited to get to share that soon, but it's still in progress. But I'll
We will
post that
stay
as well.
tuned. Yes, I can't wait. That's fantastic. Well, Katie, we have been honored to have you as part of our family forever and as part of our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Katie Wells, the Wellness Mama at wellnessmama.com. And I believe on Instagram, you're also, is it Wellness Mama?
Yeah, just Wellness
On
Mama
Instagram?
as well. Yep.
All right. So thank you guys so much for joining us today on the Rest Factor podcast. And thank you, Katie. We look forward to continue sharing wellness and longevity and all things great sleep and life together. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Information, inspiration, and opinions are my own and are not intended to be medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, medical treatment, or if you think you may have a sleep disorder. Conversations I have with subject matter experts are intended to continue our efforts to optimize your sleep for better health, more energy, and improved physical and cognitive performance.